Hello friends, welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Hyderabad. I am Dr. Sonal Mubar Roy from National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. Today we are here to learn the course Social Issues, Policies and Development. We will be looking at Block 2, Understanding Social Policy, wherein we will talk about national policies for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward classes and minorities. In this section, we will be talking about the other backward classes and minorities. This course is in Sociology UG second year for semester 3. So, in the previous sections, we have talked about the scheduled castes, we have talked about the scheduled tribes and how the constitution ensures their rights and entitlements are in place through promised and focused social policies in hand. In this section, we are focusing on other backward classes. In the constitution, the other backward classes or the OBCs are described as socially and educationally backward classes, and the government is enjoined to ensure their social and educational development. OBCs are identified based on social and educational backwardness. Their marginalization is different. It is less about exclusion and more about limited access to opportunities. So, in the previous sections, we saw how SCs and STs were excluded, devoid of rights and justice, and there was the issue of untouchability. With OBCs, it is more about limited access to opportunities. The introduction of reservation for OBCs, particularly after the Mandal Commission, marked a significant shift. It expanded the scope of social justice, but it also raised important debates about merit, about criteria, and about who qualifies as backward. This leads us to a critical question: how is backwardness defined? This leads us to a critical question: how is backwardness defined? And once defined, does it remain fixed or does it become part of political negotiation? As students of sociology, it is expected that you attempt to answer these questions, reflect on them. So, coming back to OBCs, we see there are two bodies that cater to the interest. The National Commission for Backward Classes, or NCBC, established in 1993, safeguards the interests of backward classes and advises the government on related matters. The National Backward Classes Finance and Development Corporation, which was set up in 1992, supports economic empowerment through financial assistance for self-employment, skill development and education loans for economically weaker sections of the backward classes. So, these are certain bodies that are ensuring that the OBCs are not excluded from the mainstream rights and fruits of development. Then we come to the schemes and interventions. There are centrally sponsored schemes of constitution of hostel for OBC boys and girls. There is assistance to voluntary organizations for welfare of OBCs, and then we have microfinance schemes also to cater to their financial interests. When we talk about minorities as students of sociology, just for example, you should know that these cover Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists and Zoroastrians, also known as Parsis. They have been notified as minority communities under Section 2C of the National Commission of Minorities Act 1992. As per 2001, the percentage of minorities in the countries is about 18.4% of the total population of the country, of which Muslims are 13.4%, Christians are 2.3%, Sikhs constitute 1.9% and Buddhists are 0.8%, while Parsis are very limited in number. These numbers are subject to change because this was an old census, but still we know that the minorities are very few in number, and hence we need to ensure their rights and entitlements. For minorities, the issue is not just economic disadvantage, it is also about identity, recognition and belonging. As I said, they are very few in number, and hence this is a very crucial issue. Policies aim to promote inclusion through education, employment and welfare schemes, but their effectiveness depends on not only on design but also on the broader social and political environment. At times, minority policies become part of political debates where inclusion itself becomes contested. Therefore, we have certain constitutional links. At this point, it is important to connect everything back to the constitution, as mentioned in the previous segments, we have certain rights and entitlements of the SCs, STs, the OBCs, the minorities, all backed up by the constitution. We have various acts, schemes, programs in place to ensure their social justice. The constitution provides the framework for these policies through equality before law, through affirmative action, through protection against discrimination. Hence, we see that all these issues related to violence, atrocities, untouchability, being devoid of rights and entitlements, all these are corrected under the constitutions, these policies which make sure that the minorities, the OBCs and these vulnerable groups do not face any kind of hindrance in their development. There are debates also around criteria of backwardness. Who is considered to be backward? What are the indicators of backwardness? What are the indicators of inclusion and exclusion? How do we include certain communities and exclude on what ground? How do we exclude them? Then you have the political mobilization, the whole political gambit of parties who actually have their interest for certain communities. Then there are certain biases. How do we ensure that when we are talking about social justice, we are talking about empowerment, then we have to take corrective measures and make sure that all these biases are kept aside. Then you have policies aiming to ensure equal opportunities, educational advancement and economic inclusion. These communities, if they have rights to their land, rights to better employment opportunities, rights to secure livelihoods, they'll be able to lead better quality of life. So the constitution ensures they have good education, hence the constitution makes sure that they have good rights to employment, secure livelihoods, right to good health, right to education. Their children are not devoid of education, so there are residential schools with scholarships. So all these are interventions for them. So what we see in this unit is not just a set of policies but a larger project, the project of social justice. These policies attempt to correct historical imbalances, but their success depends not only on implementation but also on whether society itself is willing to move towards greater equality. These policies are not just welfare measures, they are corrective interventions attempting to address historical injustices. But their success depends not only on design, also it depends on implementation and social change, and that perhaps is the most difficult part. So as students of sociology, can you bring in certain interventions to ensure these gaps are filled, these corrective interventions are put in place? So you should reflect on these questions. Do these policies eliminate inequality, or do they manage inequality within existing structures? However, an important question remains: has discrimination disappeared? The answer is complex. While legal provisions exist, caste often continues to operate in a subtle way in social interactions, in occupational patterns and in opportunities. In day-to-day life, you have the glimpses of caste-induced interventions. This shows us that law can prohibit practices, but transforming social attitudes is a much longer process. So in this section, you saw how we are talking about SCs, STs, minorities and other backward classes, and ensuring they have certain corrective mechanisms put in place for their betterment of life. They are empowered, there is constitutional backup through social and economic schemes, better schools, residential schools are provided to them, there is financial help, there are schemes to help them come up with small enterprises, they have scholarships for their kids, and through all these interventions collectively and through a change in mindset, we can actually ensure an empowered society and a better nation in the future. Thank you so much.